to my channel. So thanks for your comments, which I'll get to some very interesting comments, and I'll get to them as well when I do my comments video, because I really need to do that soon at some point. So I just wanted to carry on discussing this article, criticising a critical analysis of the neurodiversity movement or paradigm, I should say, to be more precise. Specifically critiquing the paradigm. The article is does the heterogeneity of autism undermining neurodiversity paradigm, Jonathan A. Hughes. So just carrying on from where I left off. So the challenge the variability of autism poses for the paradigm is that there are people whose very significant challenges appear not to be wholly socially caused and to be appropriately described as disorders. Even if activists within the movement campaign for all autistics, as they often argue, they often say, that they're campaigning for all autistics, it may be that the views to which many of them subscribe, which is the neurodiversity paradigm, namely that autism is not a disorder and that the associated disadvantages socially caused by society, are unhelpful to some of the most profoundly affected. So the question then is the denial of intrinsic harmfulness of autism plausible across this incredibly varied landscape of conditions? Some characteristics, such as the inability to tolerate sensory stimulation produced by common environments, and more substantial social difficulties, may require, in addition to the absence of discrimination, positive interventions, for example, support workers, quiet spaces, things like that. Now, advocates of the neurodiversity paradigm often support such measures, so quiet spaces, etc. But the fact that such positive interventions are needed in the first place suggests that the traits that render them necessary may be intrinsically disadvantageous. And I'd agree. I mean, let's face it. If you had a choice, you would rather not need a support worker or any of those things. You'd rather just be able to get on with life like any other person. I'd rather not need those things. They're not things that normally you'd want. So the very fact you need them, I agree, the very fact that you need them shows that it is a disorder. And even in a really perfect society, as you can imagine, the most perfect society ever, while obviously life would be a lot easier and a lot less stressful in some ways, it would still be intrinsically disabling because of the intrinsic stuff that goes on in my head, which is not caused by society. That's caused by the innate issue of being autistic, which you can't get rid of unless there was ultimately some medical cure, which quite frankly I would really like, because I hate being autistic, but yeah, we go. So clearly it's not all discrimination. Now, the counter-argument to what I just said is that the absence of such measures, support workers, quiet spaces and so on, is itself discriminatory, and that it is this that is responsible for the disadvantage. So says the neurodiversity paradigm. They say that the disadvantage is caused by the absence of those support measures. They say that, in a perfect society, if you got a support worker without without having to fight for it and so on, if all the support was provided that you needed and all of that, that somehow the disability would just go away. I think that's incredibly naive. Obviously, I want a society where I can access support effortlessly. Not this society, clearly. And we do need to fight for those things and currently we have this awful right-wing, disgusting government in power, which is absolutely disgusting and quite clearly has made it very clear that it hates disabled people, at least those that rely on the state. Obviously, if they don't rely on the state, then it makes exceptions, but it's made it very clear that it hates disabled people who need support, who need state support, that is. It sees them as a burden. There was an awful article in The Telegraph recently. I don't read The Telegraph, I saw it on Twitter. Basically asking members of the public to work out how much people on benefits and cost the taxpayer. You can see that is absolutely vile and quite frankly disability hate. It has received a lot of lots of people have responded, saying that this is basically disability hate and shouldn't be allowed. So yeah, obviously in a society that's properly accommodated disabled people, didn't treat them as though they were a burden, gave them everything they needed when they needed it, life would be a lot less stressful and a lot easier, but I'd still be disabled. That, it's naive to say otherwise. So sorry, where was I? So the argument of the neurodiversity paradigm turns the claim that autistic traits are not intrinsically disadvantaged into a moral claim that they will not be disadvantageous in a just society. But as I've just said, that is an incredibly naive, romantic idea that doesn't have any bearing on real facts. As even a just society, the most perfect society you can imagine, cannot fully meet the needs of all groups. It just can't. The modification of environment designed to accommodate one type of impairment will be sometimes detrimental to those with other types. There's always going to be someone who, I guess society is about compromise at the end of the day, isn't it? It's always going to be someone who's going to struggle because of, it's about compromise. And, no society can ever be perfect for all people. Some characteristics may remain significantly disabling even when all possible forms of support is provided. So, like I said, the intrinsic disability just cannot be ameliorated short of a cure. And like I've already said, if a cure was available, I would take one. Now, I know that's controversial, but I genuinely do not like being autistic. I hate it. It causes me so much pain. It causes me so much stress. It's not something I would choose if I could choose it. I would rather be a normal person with normal anxieties, with normal problems. I don't need this extra baggage. I just do not need it. It stops me living the life I'd otherwise choose. It stops me working. It stops me having relationships. It stops me doing things I'd otherwise choose. I do not like it. It's an imposition. It is not part of me. And I would accept a cure, and I do hope that a cure one day does become available. I don't know what cure that would be. I don't know. It sounds a bit science fiction, but maybe something like vaccine therapy. They are using vaccines and other things like treating cancer and other things. Obviously, autism isn't the same as cancer, obviously, but vaccines are available for other conditions. So maybe one day there might be some vaccines that can actually I don't know. I don't quite know how it would work, but I guess they would have to find some biomarker, wouldn't they? And then maybe vaccines would kind of change the brain or something. I don't know. Um, yeah, and it wouldn't happen overnight. It would be a course of therapy, but I guess gradually you'd find being able to connect, like all the things start making sense in your brain. You wouldn't be so sensorily aversive. You'd increasingly become like just basically all the problems would just go away. And like I'd still be the same person, I'd still have the same interests and stuff. I would still be able to like do what I want to do, but without the problems. It would be amazing. So yeah, I want a cure. I absolutely hate my disability. I'm sorry, but I absolutely hate it, and I should be allowed to say that. I don't see autism has not given me anything positive, and any things that you might see are kind of positives in inverted commas, like, I don't know, getting very interested in things, whatever. Well, so what? Like, you don't have to be autistic to get interested in stuff, and they're only positive relative to the problems, ultimately. So that doesn't wash with me. Yeah, I'd just rather be a normal Joe, nothing special, just normal person. You know what I mean? Anyway, going off on a bit of a tangent there. So yeah, so also, getting back to the article then, the article also does discuss the variability of causes in autism, because obviously autism isn't one condition, as we know, it's caused by many different things. We're still trying to work out exactly what those causes are. I think it's epigenetics. Obviously, genes don't work in isolation, they interact with other factors. So I think a lot of epigenetics is at work. So the framing of autism as a unitary diagnosis, despite its heterogeneity, is based on the assumption that there's the same underlying reality common to different manifestations. This assumption underpins the expectation that scientific study of autism, for example, conducting studies of participants with an autism diagnosis, will uncover causes, but so far research has remained elusive. They have not found the cause. So clearly there probably is not a single explanation for autism. Lots of psychological theories have been put forward, for example, theory of mind, executive functioning problems, weak central coherence, and so on and so on and so on. But it is likely that an adequate explanation will need to refer to several of these mechanisms, and the significance of each will vary case to case. I completely agree. That makes 100% sense to me. I mean, for some autistics, it might be at heart a theory of mind problem. For others, theory of mind might be less of an issue, and it might more be caused by executive dysfunction. And others might be central coherence. Some might be a combination of all of those. It's likely to differ for each individual, because you can have the same kind of similar traits or symptoms can appear that have different mechanisms. Like social difficulties can be caused by different things. We might all call it autism, but the underlying mechanism will likely vary depending on the person. And the same goes for biological causes as well. Yeah, biologically there are wide differences in autism, in the causes. And given the brain plasticity, it is not clear which differences are causes and which are the effects of autism. Again, you've got, yes, exactly, brain plasticity, because it's really difficult when you're doing brain scans to know, it's like chicken and egg really, to know what is the original cause of a particular trait and what is the result of experience, because the brain changes. So experiences, interactions over time, what you feed the brain, is going to affect how the brain looks. And so obviously there's a sort of synergy between the original cause and the effect of experiences, because obviously, like, you know, if you know, like an original trait, if you like, an original way of being is going to limit what experiences you're exposed to, that then is going to kind of reinforce certain traits over time. And those experiences can then further shape the brain. So it's not like a simple thing that any effects in the brain. It's not a simple thing that what you see in the brain is a direct result of an original cause. It's far more complicated than that. That's what they also need to remember, by the way, when this idea that male and female brains are different, which is also highly problematic, because how do we know what's biology and how do we know what's experience? You know, women are exposed, as we know, females are exposed to different things, maybe exposed less to constructional toys and things like that, which is obviously going to shape the brain. So even if there was some biology at heart, any effects are going to be massively magnified further downstream, make it look like there's a bigger difference than there probably actually is. But that's another debate. Anyway, so because the brain is very, very plastic. So yeah, so I guess if they are going to look at any cures for autism, they're probably best to start when a child is young, because the brain stays plastic all the way through life, but it's most plastic in childhood. Okay, so moving on to video number 2 now.